How baggy is too baggy?
That's actually a really good question.
Actually, let me rephrase that for you. How baggy is too baggy?
It's too baggy for, I think, like, so, like the mid 2000s where like you had like the rollerblade or the roller skate pants that were like you couldn't even see somebody's
They were
feet.
Jinkos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the name of them. I think if you can't see somebody's feet, that's way too baggy.
Okay.
I think anything other than that is fine. It's really the other side of the spectrum.
How tight is too tight?
Yeah, how tight is too tight? Like the early 2010 Hillsong situation was wild.
Are we ready?
Welcome to episode 2 of Chapel Chat. My name is Titus, and I'm here today with Pastor Chris, and we are going to be discussing discipleship in the context of being a parent. I obviously, if you don't know me, don't have any kids. I hope to have kids here in the next few years. I obviously have the opportunity to youth pastor a lot of our preteens and teenagers in Chapel Youth, and so I get a little bit of an idea of what it means to disciple students who aren't exactly related to me, but we really want to know more about what it means to disciple those within your own home. So before we really talk about the actual discipleship process, is there anything that parents need to be thinking about in relation to themselves and who they are in this process of discipleship?
I would say if you want to disciple your kids, you probably need to be a disciple yourself. So the first thing would be just be a Christian. You can't reproduce something you're not. We live in Tulsa, and so we have a lot of great Christian schools. One of the things I've seen over the years is sometimes there's a temptation of a parent to really appreciate Christian values or a Christian way of living, but they don't necessarily want to go all in themselves, but they want that for their kids. So they'll send them to a Christian school and kind of feel like, oh, that's going to cover it. That's going to take care of it. But it really is that idea of you can't reproduce what you're not. So like in our home, if Angie and I made a decision of, we really want our kids to be vegans, it's probably not going to happen because I'm not going to participate in that.
Right. Why?
Ever. Why? Do I hate myself?
Probably.
Do I hate other people? I will hate other people if I do that. But, it's that very simple, like whatever you are is most likely what your kids are going to be. And so if you decide as a parent, which I hope everyone would, that one of the first priorities for their children is that they're followers of Jesus, then as a parent, that means I've got to be a follower of Jesus because I'm the primary discipler in the life of my child, and I get more time with them than anyone else does. And that's really scripturally, that's a responsibility that's placed on me as a father and my wife as a mother first, before it's ever placed on a youth pastor or a local church or a Christian school teacher or a FCA leader or anyone else that God might bring into their life to help with that process.
Yeah, what would you say to somebody who is day in, day out, they really are trying their best to be the example and ultimately be a disciple of Jesus Christ to model for their children. But there's this immense pressure to do everything right, to check all of the boxes. I can't ever let my guard down as far as being a Christian in front of my kids. What would you say to that worried parent?
One, I would say relax.
Yeah.
God called you to this. You're going to be okay. He's going to equip you for it. Two, I'd say don't hold yourself to an unrealistic standard. Depending on what social media you're consuming, what parenting books you might be reading, you might feel like if our family doesn't wake up every morning with a 1-hour Bible study, followed by an hour of prayer, followed by whatever.
Failure.
Exactly. that your kids are going straight to hell.
Yeah.
And really realistically, your kids are busy, you're busy. And so you're just trying to figure out what that looks like. The challenge of parenting is every new season, you have zero experience with. So like for you and Rachel, I believe God's going to bless you guys with kids. And the first time you hold that baby in the hospital is the first time you've held your baby in the hospital. And then the first time they're 3 years old and, you look at them and say, don't make me count to 3. And you say 1 and they look at you and say 2, 3. That's the first time you've ever had that experience and you're trying to figure it out. And then the same thing when you send them to school, the same thing when they're teenagers, when they start driving, when they leave your house to go to college. everything is a first, and then if you have 2 or 3 kids, the second time you do it, it's still the first time because it's the first time with that kid. And the same thing with the third. So I think it's really important that you find a mentor. Find people who are a stage or two ahead of you in that journey. And when you're thinking of a mentor, one of the things that Angie and I think kind of just stumbled into by God's grace was we just kind of identified kids that we liked and hoped ours would kind of turn out like. And then we tried to spend some time with their parents. And so for us, that was a little easier because we were youth pastors at the time. So you could see like, hey, that kid's nice. That kid's fun. That kid is articulate. That kid's intelligent. That kid's thoughtful. And then you would just spend some time with their parents, not super formal, but just kind of getting a feel for how they structured their family, how they spent their time, what their priorities were, what was important to them, and kind of working through that.
Yeah. So it just kind of be like in natural moments where you spend time around these parents that you looked up to, and you would just ask them questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think we ever went to someone and said, will you mentor us on parenting?
Right.
It was just very much like, hey, we live in community together. These were people we went to church with, So again, if you're going to disciple your kids, hopefully you're part of a local church. If you're part of a local church, you need to invest and build those relationships, especially multi-generational relationships, because you don't want all your advice for raising toddlers to be from other parents of toddlers at the same time. Yeah. Because sometimes you guys are all swimming in the same deep waters and just kind of trying to come up for air. Right. You need the perspective of somebody who's 5 or 10 years ahead of you who can look back and encourage you you're going to make it, tell you 1 or 2 things they did well, tell you 1 or 2 things that maybe they wish they would have done differently, and then you can kind of learn from them as you go along. But yeah, mostly it was, the occasional, let's go to lunch. Angie would find families with pools and see if they would invite her and the kids over to swim, and she'd talk to the moms a lot while they did some of that. So whatever it is, just kind of make the effort.
That's really good. In this context of community, obviously, you just go on social media for 2 seconds and literally everybody has an opinion about parenting. Everybody has an idea about how to do it the right way, or what is wrong, or what is the best versus what is the worst. What about the parent who is probably rightfully so, just with the society and the culture that we live in, very protective over their children, and they want to make sure that their model of parenting is happening not only within their home, but also outside of their home and how they're discipling their kids. Maybe they're a little bit hesitant, and you touched a little bit on this aspect of community, but maybe they're hesitant to jump into community because of some of these ideas that they have about parenting. What would you say to them? Is it a benefit for them to jump into that community, or do you understand their isolation if they're not wanting to open themselves or their kids up to other forms of parenting?
Yeah, I think isolation generally is detrimental to Christian faith and discipleship. Like we're made for community. We're made to live in a community. And so I would probably push back pretty strongly against any kind of idea of the best thing for you and your kids is to just be completely internalized and separated from everyone else. Community helps you understand, and again, we're talking about scriptural-based, authentic Christian community, right? So the ideal is it's not perfect, but it's healthy. And so a healthy community is going to help you know as a parent, are these normal struggles my kids are having? Are these normal stages of life we're going through? Or are these some really tough seasons that we need to pay attention to? We need to make some extra investment in. And then sometimes in community, as you get to know other people and the things they go through with their kids, you walk away feeling like, hey, we're pretty good right now. Like this is a great season. We should really be grateful and express that and just enjoy what we're doing here. But yeah, I wouldn't encourage any Christian to live in fear of the influence of other believers on the lives of their children, right? Now, I think you should guard the homes you allow your kids to go into. I think you should be careful about the influences of other adults in their life. But again, that's where if you're living in a local church and you're getting to know other believers and you're knowing those parents, you should have a higher level of comfort than of learning from them and sharing stories with them and being able to trust them that you can talk to them about your kids without them then sharing those stories in ways that would embarrass or humiliate your kids.
Sure. Do you think that there's also that truth where it's like as a parent and you're being asked to then speak into another maybe young parent's life, again, you're like a stage or two ahead of somebody else. There is that truth of you don't even realize the depth and the reservoirs of knowledge and truth that you have as somebody who is parenting a child, that could be such useful information for somebody coming after you. I mean, there's probably, I would say, not ignorance is such a strong word, but maybe just a lack of knowledge to how much somebody with older kids, even if that older means they're 7, 8, 9 years old, how much they could be helping and investing that next generation of parents.
Yeah, absolutely. And the benefit of seeking a mentor who's already been through it, or seeking advice from somebody who's already been through it, versus turning to TikTok or Instagram to get advice from somebody who's going through it, is the person who's going through it doesn't know if their way works or not. Right. So there might be a whole new wave of parenting, but if it's only being led by people who are currently parenting 3-year-olds, you don't know what kind of 13-year-old that creates. You don't know what kind of 23-year-old that creates. But if you're talking to someone who's 10 to 15 years ahead of you, they kind of have a little bit of proof of concept that they can point to.
They're throwing their kids out there in front of millions of people. I mean, that's a separate conversation, but that's always been an interesting thing to me.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, here's my children. Here's how they're growing up in front of millions of followers.
Isn't that your plan?
Yeah. That's how we're going to kind of...
That's how you're going to pay my mentoring
income
fee.
on the side. Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah, that'll make it for the rest of the $25.
That'll be good. Yeah.
But then also on that is you're looking at somebody's life as they're parenting a young child, and you have no personal connection with them.
Right.
You have no actual investment. You have no accountability to that person. They don't have an accountability to you. It's like if their life falls apart, because I've seen that happen with those influencers. Divorce happens, their life falls apart, something happens. And it's like, well, I probably shouldn't have stocked so much trust in their advice because I didn't even really know who they were.
Yeah, no. And I remember a couple of years ago talking to a mom at church who her daughter had gotten married, had kids. And she was expressing to me a bit of a frustration of like, she's raising these kids, but her first option for every problem is YouTube or Google.
Right.
Sometimes forgetting that she's surrounded by a community of people who raised her and all of her friends.
Yeah, but Pastor Chris, ChatGPT. I mean, that's the new level here.
I mean, I think that's sure it's fine for some things, but
but not for replacing.
ChatGPT's never parented a teenager.
It's not. But it's accumulating all of its experiences from other people who have parented teenagers.
No.
Listen, I've been on a ChatGPT grind lately. I'm not using it to write my sermons, though. You can trust that.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's another episode.
On the idea of mentorship, for you specifically, individually, who would you say are those or were those mentors for you and Angie?
Yeah, so some of them were relationships at Christian Chapel that were like ongoing still going to today. Others of them were like one-off. Like I'd hear a guy at a conference, he'd mention something about being a parent of a teenager that connected with where we were, so I would go talk to him. So 2 examples. One, Don and Kelly Conwell, longtime members of Christian Chapel.
Yeah.
When Angie and I came as youth pastors, their 4 kids were all in the youth group. We liked their kids. We enjoyed Don and Kelly. And so we would start hanging out with them. Angie would take our kids over to their house to swim. Their girls would babysit our kids. And then over the years, Don and I have served in different capacities together at the church. So I've got to know them, ask them questions. I remember specifically Kelly telling Angie, like, you just got to get through the first year.
Yeah.
And once you're through the first year, life's going to be great. Because you almost get to raise them like twins and they can do everything at the same time and you're never waiting on the baby to catch up. And,
Got it.
And Angie and I clung to that for that first year of if we can just get out of this world where we have 2 kids in diapers, life's going to be good. And so sometimes it's as simple as just somebody giving you one little phrase that you just hang on to in that season.
Right. Was there any anti-mentors? You said, I'm going to avoid raising my kids like this, like the plague.
So
name's probably not going to be mentioned here.
100% not. But there are definitely, so the same principle would apply on the other side. If somebody has kids you like and you want to know how they did it.
Yeah.
If somebody has kids you don't like
Yeah.
you want to maybe observe some of the things they did as
What are
well.
they doing?
And go in the opposite direction.
How do I avoid that?
Yeah.
Like
but
death itself.
that's more of a reverse mentoring.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, you probably need to be covert with it.
Right.
Not like, hey, your kids suck.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious if you can tell me why that's so
Right.
I can avoid it with mine.
Right.
It's probably not going to go well or lead to good experiences of community.
Right. Because I'm on this podcast with you, for me looking ahead, do I need to also say that like your kids are models for Rachel and I as well? That you're a mentor, you and Angie are as well?
I mean, it depends on if you authentically like my kids or not.
I do.
Genuinely?
Absolutely.
Or because I'm your boss?
I genuinely like his kids, even if he wasn't my boss. Connor, Corbin, Audrey, love them.
My rate's about $100 an hour.
Okay. Well,
So-
we have the budget for 75. So
45 minutes.
in this idea of being involved in this Christian community, obviously it's good to, like you said, have these other people in your life and for them to be involved in your lives and in the lives of your children. When it really comes down to then is the authority that we have in the scriptures. And so kind of something that I wanted to ask you on, and something that you had mentioned earlier, is about placing your faith and your trust in the scriptures. Are there specific scriptures that we can trust regarding raising our children? What does the Bible have to say about discipleship of the next generation, specifically in our home?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, to answer the first question, are there scriptures we can trust with raising our children?
Yeah.
Yes, there are. Actually, all of them.
Right.
They're all useful. They're all helpful. Paul tells us that they're useful for teaching, for instruction, for reproof, whatever is needed and necessary. That's what the scriptures are for. When it comes to parenting and discipling your kids, you do want to trust the authority of scripture in their life. But I think as a parent, what you're really leaning into there is not necessarily, are there 10 scriptural steps that I need to apply to a toddler, to an elementary kid, to a teenager? The scriptures aren't written that way. They're not designed that way. The scriptures cross culture, the scriptures cross time, the scriptures cross all of these things. And so these are timeless truths that we're looking to apply. So I think of, Ephesians chapter 6, where Paul tells us to bring our children up in the training of the Lord. Yeah. Now that's an expansive thing. It's not just about make sure your kid prays or reads the Bible or goes to youth camp or has a work ethic or whatever it is. It's the whole counsel of the Lord is the idea there. And so you're looking for ways to kind of incorporate the scriptures into your life. You're looking for ways to help your kids understand the decisions we're making as a family, the way we choose to live. These are not just our ideals, our preferences, or the way my parents or grandparents did it, but these actually are scriptural principles being played out every day in the real world and in our lives. And so, you're just trying to trust those timeless truths. You're trying to plant your kids in a scripture-based community, which maybe we can circle back to that at another time. And I can ask you those questions of what are the hallmarks you see of teenagers who are serious about their faith and how can we encourage that? But I think as a parent, if you can plant them in a community where others are also helping them to appreciate the scriptures, to learn from them and to apply them, what you'll discover is those teachers aren't designed to replace you, right? So again, I can't farm out the discipleship of my kids to you as their youth pastor.
Yeah.
And then if at 25, they're kind of messed up, I'm like, well, that was Titus's fault. I mean, clearly he didn't do a good enough job. It's my job. Your job is never to replace me as a father, but your job is to reinforce the things that hopefully are also being done in our home. And so one of the things you discover, especially as your kids get older, is there are going to be times that you'll be in conversation with them and they'll tell you things as if they've heard it for the first time.
Right.
Whereas a parent, I've actually been telling you that for 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's happened where our kids have come home from youth group on a Wednesday night, and I've asked them what you've talked about, and they've been really excited to tell me something, and I don't try to steal your thunder, but inside I know actually I've been saying that
for 15 years.
Sometimes I know actually I think I said that to Titus in a meeting once.
He actually just regurgitated.
I think
that.
he did. He just put some Gen Z, Gen Alpha language on it, and you guys heard it too. But it's really helpful to have other people in their life who can speak into them and do those things as well. Rapid fire.
Here we are, rapid fire with episode 2. This week, we get to discuss Generation Z slang. Are you ready to discuss Generation Z slang and what these terms mean?
I'm sure.
Delulu.
Delusional.
Nailed it. Riz.
It's like charisma.
Yeah.
Like kind of flirtatious, right? I'm a millennial, basically.
Listen, yeah. You're only one generation away from this.
Cutting edge.
Only one
millennial.
removed. Yeah. Barely, by the way. I think you're on that year.
Depending on the survey, yes.
Yeah. Skibbity.
I don't know.
It's kind of hard to explain, honestly. Like, even teenagers have a hard time explaining it, but it comes from a meme of a head in a toilet.
That's
Just twirling around like a skibbity
ridiculous.
toilet. Mid.
Just like average.
Yeah. All right. I mean, we are 4 for 5 right now. Bet.
Okay. I know that because you say it all the time.
Yeah, like in confirmation of okay. I don't say it all that often, right?
Pretty frequently.
Okay.
Probably more than you should.
No cap.
Also, a Titus Schmidt standard. I'm not lying.
Which means?
That's true.
Which means?
It means it's true. I'm not lying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought you were saying I'm not lying. It's a Titus Schmidt standard. It's true.
Well, yeah, that's also true.
Slay.
You're killing it.
Yeah, you're on this.
I have teenagers at home.
You know what a W and an L is?
A win and a loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
NPC. I was curious if you're going to get this one.
It's some like video game non-player character or something like that.
Non-playable character.
Like a background person, right?
Yeah. Do you know like why somebody would use it in a sentence or the type of person you would use to describe it?
Would it be like in a staff meeting where we're making big decisions, Titus is an NPC?
I would hope not.
Is that accurate?
Kind of. It kind of just means I'm there and I'm doing nothing.
Okay.
Finsta. Do you know what a Finsta is?
I have no idea.
Fake Instagram account. Thank you for listening to this rapid fire take. I love that you touched on parents as the primary discipler of their children. Are there some hallmarks and some big differentiations that a parent should be taking ownership of in the life of their child versus that of a youth pastor, of a teacher at a private school, of a mentor that's outside of the home? I mean, you talked about it being a supplication, like the youth pastor and these teachers and these influences and these other adults, maybe parents, trusted parents of their friends, being supplication. What are the definitive hallmarks of a parent discipling their kids that a kid cannot and should not get somewhere else?
It really just kind of boils down to consistency. Sure. As a parent, again, it's not really a checklist of like, if I do A, B, and C every day, my kid is guaranteed to be a Christian and never make poor choices and always reflect well on me and never cause me headaches or heartaches. That's not the way it goes. You know, the scriptures are clear that if you train up a child in the way they go, when they're old, they won't depart from it. Right? We find that in Proverbs 22. And in Proverbs, it's not necessarily a guarantee of if you take them to church and teach them the scriptures, they're never going to wonder, they're never going to have a difficult moment. The promise of that passage is when they're old, even if they wonder, they'll come back to it. Right? Now we hope for our kids, there's never that season of wondering, but every kid's going to make some mistakes. Every kid's going to do some things different. So as a parent, it's really just learning my primary job is to be a consistent model of Christian life, thought, and behavior in front of them. To hold those Christian values and implement them into our family schedule. You know, so in our family, we go to church. It's just what we do. Right. And we try to make that clear. That's not because I'm a pastor. It's because we're Christians. And we build our schedule around that. And so when it comes to sports and other activities, those are always going to be secondary to your participation in the local church. Because, you know, the basketball stops bouncing one day. But the church is the only institution Jesus has promised will endure until he returns. And so we want to anchor them in that in really powerful ways. And then part of that consistency as a parent too is just understanding every season of life with your kids has some roller coaster elements to it. There's some really high highs. There's some really low lows. You've never loved anyone in the way you love your children. At the same time, you've never felt pain in the way you have when your kids are hurting or when they're suffering or when they're going through things. And so what you're learning then is in the really high highs, we're not going to abandon the principles that have got us to this moment.
Yeah.
And in the really low lows, we're not going to give up on them either. But as a parent, I think that the number one thing you can do that a youth pastor, a teacher, a coach, a FCA leader, a small group leader can never do is you are just that daily source of consistency in the life of your child. And living out your faith in authentic ways, letting them know that, hey, there are spaces where we're trusting the Lord right now. There's spaces where we're listening for his voice, not in ways that create insecurity or doubt for your kids, but just in ways that kind of model, this is what real faith in the real world looks like.
As you were just talking about that, this process of discipleship, how do you, and maybe it really is just the element of faith, but just kind of let go. I mean, there's that classic kind of cheesy saying, but like let go and let God. But how do you just kind of let go and trust, okay, I'm going to model this, but God's going to speak to my kids. He's going to disciple my kids ultimately. He's going to lead them into truth. For somebody who's like discipling very young kids right now, how do they walk through some of those difficult seasons knowing I kind of got to be hands off and let God intervene and influence? Is it?
Yeah, it's that let go idea is interesting because as a parent, one, you can't let go too early.
Sure.
Like I've definitely seen that at times where parents have that like, well, they belong to the Lord first, so we're just going to trust him. It's like, yeah, but they're 7. So kind of stay engaged, right? Or they're 14, like they're 16, they can drive, but that doesn't mean they don't need any input. They don't need any boundaries. They don't need any guidelines. But there is this kind of picture of your job as a parent is just kind of to pile as much spiritual firewood around the heart of your kid as you can, right? Yeah. And so that's community and it's scriptures and it's you're praying for them and it's you're investing in them and you're trying to place them in environments that are going to encourage and facilitate their faith. But when it comes to that letting go point, it is that point of like no parent can ever make a salvation decision for their child. Right. No parent can ever make their child to surrender to the power of the Holy Spirit. And so the let go is that I'm going to do everything God has called me to do. But I'm also going to understand there has to be a point where your faith becomes personal. There has to be enough. I can't control so much that I remove the spaces where God is wanting to speak to you. I know in my life, difficult seasons, seasons of loss, seasons of disappointment are oftentimes when I've heard God's voice the clearest. And yet as a parent, I'd rather my kids just hear his voice in victory. Yeah. I don't want them to hurt. I don't want them to suffer. I don't want them to go through hardship or difficulty. But sometimes it is like there have been seasons where our kids, you can see the decisions they're making and they're going to fail. And as a parent, you want to step in and save them from that. But for Angie and I, if we identify it's kind of what we call a safe failure, it's not a life-altering failure. It's not an issue of extreme immorality or something like that. Then sometimes you just got to let them fail and you got to let them experience the consequences of it. And you got to let them hear God's voice through that, because those are the situations really where you learn about grace and mercy and God's peace and God's presence and all these things. But that I would think for us would probably be the hardest part of letting go is when it's like, hey, if you'll just listen to me, we can avoid this. But also understanding sometimes you just need to go through that so you'll learn to listen to God instead of just listening to me.
Yeah. That's great. So what is one final thing that you would say to parents discipling their kids?
I would tell parents, just be encouraged. You've got this. God chose you to be the mom, to be the dad to the kids that you have. Yeah. No one else is coming to fill that role for you. And whatever job God gives us, he equips us for. And so just kind of take the long view. Your goal is not to raise a perfect 7-year-old or 17-year-old. A mentor told me a few years ago of really the older your kids get, the more you can think of, I want to do everything I can to help them be a healthy 30-year-old that loves Jesus. And so just kind of take the long view of your kids, trust the scriptures, trust the community that God's placed you in, and just believe that if children are a gift from the Lord, then he's going to provide for you as you're raising them to be the men and women he's created them to be.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in to this episode 2 of Chapel Chat. Just want to encourage y'all, if you enjoyed this, just give it a like, subscribe to this channel, drop a comment if you liked it or if there's other things that you would like to hear discussed. And we hope that you guys tune in for the next episode. We'll see you later.